Welcome into the PFF podcast. It is your big-time Throwcast edition. Steve Palazzolo, joined as always by Zac Robinson, former NFL quarterback and college football star. We're here every week breaking down everything quarterbacks in the NFL. Today with a little touch of NFL draft, so you're going to want to stick around for that. If your team is starting to lose some games, and if you've got some uneasiness at the quarterback position, you're going to want to stick around and hear some of our insight. We're going to give a quick rundown of some of the top NFL draft prospects, what we've seen through about half a season. Beyond that, we'll discuss some Marcus Mariota, some Phillip Rivers, of course the Aaron Rodgers injury situation with Brett Hundley, and so much more. So, Zach, welcome in. Another week, another week of breaking down some quarterbacks. It was nobody really spectacular this week from the quarterback position.
Kind of just a meh week. You saw, I felt like watching the games that you saw a lot of quarterbacks, put players in position to make plays, and a lot of receivers making plays down the field. I think grade-wise, from a plus-minus standpoint, you saw only 12 guys sitting at average or better this week. So it's kind of a little bit of a down week. Not a whole lot of big-time throws. There's certainly some sprinkled in there, but I guess what we've seen in the past previous few weeks compared to this week was just a little bit down.
I'm a quarterback guy. I'm a thrower, but I do like a little bit of defense every now and again. I'm okay with watching some. Look, I just like when guys have to work for their yards and work for their throws and work for things. That's all. I just want to see. I don't like the easy stuff. That's why I complain on Twitter all the time, like about that easy touchdown that this guy gets in his stats.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Saints defense. That some of those stats that they were firing up that game, for a defensive guy, man, you had to like that one.
Oh yeah, I'm not a defensive guy necessarily.
Well, any defensive guy out there, I'll say.
I got you.
Game, there was. I think what was it? 7 batted passes at the line of scrimmage.
7 batted passes by Matthew Stafford.
Just tough day for Stafford, but tough day for a lot of these guys, kind of throughout the league, but still had some top end performances. We'll get into a couple of those here.
Yeah, we're going to start with Marcus Mariota in a bit. In a second, he's the Western and Southern Quarterback of the Week, our new sponsor for our Team of the Week and our Quarterback of the Week. He had a fantastic Monday Night Football game after a slow start. If you guys want more information about just the pure PFF grades versus traditional stats, we kicked off last week's QB analysis podcast. That's what you'll see it in as on the PFF podcast feed, the QB analysis breakdown. Last week's episode, we kicked it off with some grades versus stats analysis. That is evergreen. It's about 5 minutes of discussion of what we do and a little bit of context behind this. So if you guys are new to the podcast, be sure to check that out. Also, if you're new, hit that subscribe button because we got some awesome stuff coming. 4 episodes per week here on the PFF podcast. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Marcus Mariota making his return from injury. The first thing to discuss, I think, they talked about it left and right that night. He wasn't scrambling. He didn't have that same mobility, and they did also make it seem like Marcus Mariota had never played from the pocket before, and it's like, Marcus Mariota's got to win from the pocket. This is new, uncharted waters. But, he's a pocket-first guy who happens to have really good athleticism that I think in the designed run game, and when he scrambles every now and again, it's a weapon, but certainly wouldn't call him a run-around, making plays type of guy. If anything, you and I uncovered this offseason that he's very much the opposite. He's not a great run around and make plays guys. He's not great outside the pocket on those plays. So what'd you see from Mariota? First thing that stood out, no athleticism that he usually has, and a little rusty, but he got it together as the game went on.
Yeah, started off a little rusty. I'm with you. I don't understand the, I guess, deal that's out there that he can't win from the pocket. He's a guy that can scan through progressions, feel the pocket, all that stuff. So you saw him do it pretty well. Once he got knocked off that rust, he hit a deep cross off of play action fairly early on, I think in the second quarter. That kind of kicked him and got him going a little bit. Hit a number of play action shots. He had outbreakers outside the numbers. Was really on point. Had the highest percent of play action pass this week's 36.4%, and passer rating 149.1 on those, which was second best this week.
Wow.
10 of 11, 185 yards and a touchdown. So all those chunk plays came off of play action, and he definitely made them hurt down the field.
I mean, is that just your perfect setup for the Titans in their pass game? I mean, you talk about this exotic smash mouth running attack with DeMarco Murray, with Derrick Henry. They run power, they run counter, they run all sorts of different concepts. They want to establish the run, old school football, work play action off of that, and then Mariota, his numbers are incredible off that. You simplify the reads for him. I mean, this ultimately, other than the red zone, right, where they just stalled out on a number of drives, this was pretty much their game. This was their game, right, as far as executing a Titans-like game plan and what they want to do.
Yep, I'm with you. Their play action, all their big plays come off of that. We saw it, kind of started last year. He hit a number of deep posts, and he's got a great feel for some of those throws down the field. We saw the other night on a kind of a deep, high-angle corner route that he hit perfectly. He's got a great feel for those. If you look at his passer rating using play action this year, he's second in the NFL. 139.4. When he drops down and there's no play action, he is fourth lowest in the NFL at 67.2.
Wow,
so there's a huge drop off. So they definitely, you're right. They got to get the running game and keep that rolling and kind of keep him in rhythm with the chunk plays off play action.
So I think that perfectly encapsulates Mariota for me right now. Just before we got on here, I said, where do we put Mariota when you start ranking him and stuff? Is he just a middle-of-the-pack quarterback that will have some top-end type of plays or top-end type of seasons? The non-play action stuff, I think, is the most concerning when you're looking at his total body of work. Again, he was our top-graded quarterback this week. He had a great second half against Indianapolis, all of that stuff. But there's still something to quarterbacks have 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, and you just have to convert, and you need that guy back there that can do it. And I'm not saying that he can't. He had a number of big third down conversions the other night as well. But do you trust him to be that guy week in, week out if the game goes off script? Or is he a guy that, because of his athleticism, you can run a little bit more, and this is how I've described him, right? RPOs, you add that to the game, and he can work off play action, and he's just enough of a run threat that you add these extra bits and pieces to the offense. But is he a guy that you trust on 3rd and long? And I don't know this year if he's that guy just yet. Right. Where do you see him as far as stacking up in that part of his game?
Yeah, I think it goes back to saying if the flow of the game and it becomes a drop back type of game, and maybe they're facing another good quarterback on the other side that's putting up a bunch of points and they get down early, can he just drop back and win the game that way and not use all the running game and all the things that they have with it? I think he's getting better in that department. I don't know if you can throw him in there right now that he's just going to go and win you a bunch of games and carry the team right now. But he definitely has, those things to be able to do that. You still want to see kind of some footwork be cleaned up and just a little more decisive on certain types of reads. But certainly played well last night. It was good to see him get back out there and get going again.
So we discussed a little bit of the footwork stuff this offseason when we broke down each quarterback individually. Do you want to just break that down a little bit further as far as mostly what is shotgun footwork that just kind of has him off balance at times? Shotgun
footwork, it's kind of a little rigid. There's not a whole lot of fluidity, and then he suffers accuracy-wise because of it. You saw last night it didn't matter that much. Sometimes when he gets into these, though, and there's tighter coverage and the ball gets left on one side that it shouldn't be on, then he gets in a little bit of trouble. But that's it. There's not a whole lot of rhythm with his footwork and kind of fluidity to get all of his momentum into the throw at times.
And the other part that I thought might limit his quote-unquote upside, Mike Renner for using the word upside, but his ability to just take his game to the very, very next level. I don't think he has a cannon for an arm. So, he's got a very quick release, though. I think that offsets it a little bit. And as long as you're seeing the game clearly and you're throwing early and on time, that offsets it a little bit. But I always come back to velocity, whether we're talking about a quarterback or whether we're talking about a pitcher. Velocity just gives you margin for error, right? Like if you don't read the play out perfectly, okay, I can zip it in there a little bit later. Or if I throw a ball right down the middle as a pitcher, it's a little bit better if it's coming in at 97 rather than 90. I've got a little bit more leeway. I don't think Mariota has that zip, that little extra leeway, so I do think he needs to be that much better in these other areas. What are your thoughts on his arm, release, and just where that kind of stacks up around the rest of the NFL?
I think his arm's okay. I think it's good. It's certainly, it has some zip, as it like some of these other guys know, but I think the main thing is some of those, up and over throws, which actually he threw really well last night, kind of up and over backers to the outside. He's always been kind of, in my mind, a flatter ball thrower, and we've talked about that in the off season. That some of those throws, whether you got a tight pocket and you got to not necessarily have a clear window to throw in between, and you got to get it up and over a guy. Can he make those with more consistency? Because those are your big plays. Those are your digs over the middle and those tough 3rd and 8 conversions. Can he make those a little bit more consistently? I think is the thing that you're looking for.
So that's Marcus Mariota. Pretty good game from him Monday night. Again, our Western and Southern quarterback of the week. We're moving on to Phillip Rivers, Los Angeles Chargers. Getting the Chargers back on track, their second win. And, Rivers is another guy that you just kind of like, for me, I'm just back and forth on. He still does things where you're like, this is high-level, high-end quarterback play. Then there's other times when you're like, man, he looks old. We talked about him last week, that 2004 draft class. Go back and listen to our breakdown. Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, and Eli Manning. We broke them down in last week's episode and said, what is up with these guys? They all look old. They all look like they're on their last leg, but they all still show signs of high-level NFL-type quarterback play. Rivers, this is definitely one of his better games of the last 2 seasons this past weekend, and a bunch of wow throws, including one that I threw into the Google Doc here, Zach. I was like, dig route, second quarter, anticipation, ball location. That was a special throw. It was good to see that, from Rivers, who's been just inconsistent the last couple of years, either because he's getting a little bit older or the environment around him, poor offensive line, whatever it might be. But, some impressive throws, especially down the stretch against Oakland. No
doubt. Yeah, some of those fourth quarter throws, he threw a number of corner routes, and you mentioned that dig over the middle, how he got that thing up over the backer and still down to the receiver on the dig. That is an unbelievable throw. But, yeah, he didn't start off the game too hot. Had a dropped pick on a deep cross, kind of forced it into double coverage, but then he just caught fire in his kind of typical fashion, and I think the biggest thing was he was under pressure second most this week at 45.9. He was only sacked once out of all those dropbacks. I think it was 17 out of 37 dropbacks, only sacked once. Just found completions. The biggest thing we talk about with him is under pressure. Does he force some throws? No critical errors under pressure. Didn't make any mistakes, and then also had the best adjusted accuracy in a clean pocket this week, 89.5. So you add that up, and they kind of hung around in that game, and then he made the plays in the fourth quarter to ultimately give him a chance to make that kick and win it. Yeah, he has enough games where you're just like, okay, he still has it, right? Like he still has this ability. The arm thing is definitely worrisome. Early in the year, he had that game against Kansas City where it was almost identical to last year against Kansas City. It's like, why are you throwing a corner route directly at this cornerback? You don't have the arm strength to get it up and over him. This was the opposite, though. The corner routes were great. The dig route was great. I mean, he had those throws in the bag that he needed. So he had those handful of big-time throws. It was good to see that because we hadn't seen it all season. He still ranks 31st in big-time throw percentage. Extremely low. That's 31 out of 36 qualifiers. So among the league's worst there in big-time throws, and still a little bit too high in turnover-worthy throws, most of those coming against Kansas City earlier in the season. So what do you make of Rivers at this point? You have games like this where, like you said, he started out slow, he's got some bad, and,
when the pressure can absolutely throw his entire game off. But then there's other times it's like, all right, this was a guy that was a top 8 to 10 quarterback for much of his career, top 5, for a number of his of seasons as well. What do you make of Rivers right now at this point?
I still like his game. We've talked about it a bunch, but I've always been a huge fan. You are getting, some high variance on some plays, like you said, typically under pressure. The teams that are kind of have the good pass rush and can play tight man-to-man, struggles a little bit. And then when the zones have spread out, like an Oakland team last week, and he's just going to dice you up and you keep him clean, that's what it's going to be. So if you can keep him upright and he makes good decisions under pressure, they're typically going to have a good chance to win because of that kind of it factor that he's got late in games to pull it out.
So all of last year we talked about the offensive line and their inability to protect. So far this year, just from a pure pass blocking grade, the Chargers are 21st out of 32. Now that doesn't sound great, being 21st, but when you're coming from a team last year, let me just get their official ranking because I know it might have been last, but it was really, really bad is what it was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they were 20. They were 27th, but they were at like this 26 through 32. Were at like the dire end of really, really bad. Right there with the Minnesota Vikings and Indianapolis Colts and these other offensive lines that are just poor.
Yeah,
moving up to 21 is pretty good.
Colts territory.
Yeah, and I keep citing that particular game that stood out to me, the Dolphins game, where he looked like walls were collapsing from all angles. Right, they were getting pressure at all 4 defensive line spots on some plays against him. So he was dealing with those types of games last year. This year, he's being protected better, and look, overall he should be doing more with it. But it is a good sign that he can put together a few good games here as the Chargers try to get back in the race. Again, their second win after a slow start, after Mike Renner predicted Super Bowl glory for the Chargers or whatever he was predicting. But maybe we could, maybe they're ready to creep back into the AFC West race, which is now, tightening up a little bit after it looked like the Chiefs might run away with it, and the Raiders were potentially ready to run away with it. So
right, that division in general. We saw it last year. I mean, it's anybody's race right now. You got the Broncos started off the year, looks like they're playing really well, Simeon, and then you've seen the narrative change pretty quick. So they're definitely not out of it. They're get back to 500 and then shoot. Never know what can happen.
All right, we're going to move on to discussing Aaron Rodgers and his injury. Did you want to touch on Simeon real quick because we haven't talked? You must you're getting the itch. Like we haven't talked about Simeon for weeks. He has a rough outing against the New York Giants. Real quick, was this just that bad matchup for Simeon again? That was when he goes up against certain teams and certain defenses, it's just not a good matchup. Yeah,
it kind of was. It was, you actually labeled it off air the 2-4-6 type of teams that kind of mix their coverages pretty well, mix the looks, movement defense, pressure defense, Spagnola. So.
And those are, in PFF terms, the 2-4-6 defense. The reason why I said that is when we track coverages, we just say, okay, if it's cover 2, we're just calling it 2, and cover 4 or quarters, we're calling it 4. And there's a lot of teams that use those 2 high looks, and it's cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. And all of those coverages kind of work off each other. They've got their own rules, their own little quirks and strengths and weaknesses, but a lot of teams that, if you're a cover 2 team, usually play a lot of 4 and 6. And again, those are the types of teams that, maybe aren't the best fit for Simeon to go up against.
Right, yeah, and then you mix in their single high pressures, and it was a tough matchup. They moved around on him, kind of disguised the look, and made him, try to come off of his second read that he didn't do a whole lot. So it was a tough game, but shoot, next week could be a totally different story if kind of the coverages match up a little bit better.
Yeah, searching for that consistency from Trevor Simeon. I had to throw him in there. It's been a while.
There you go.
All right, Aaron Rodgers, broken collarbone, essentially out for the season. I apologized, I sent my condolences to Green Bay fans on the Week 6 review podcast. I just feel bad for fans, when any player goes down. I don't like when players get hurt in general, but especially a player as great as Aaron Rodgers, where your team's Super Bowl hopes truly depend on that guy's right arm and his legs. And he's off to a fantastic start again this season. Rodgers hurt. Brett Hundley is the next man up. A guy that I think at one point in his college career, people were like, hey, this guy with his arm talent and his athleticism, he's a future potential first-round pick. I don't think he was ever a special college player. Had some issues in college as well that I think have continued in his limited time in the NFL, whether it's in the preseason or just the other day against the Minnesota Vikings. So give me clean slate. What do you think about Hundley right now, what you're seeing, and did you have an opinion on him out of college? Did you see a lot of him out of college? Because that was pre-PFF for you.
Right, yeah. I kind of followed, just watched TV copies and would catch a game here and there. Didn't really, get it from an analyst type standpoint. I wasn't a big fan of his coming out. Still kind of, as you see him in preseason games and then last week getting to see him, I still don't really see it as him as a backup, especially for that team. Last week, tough, backs against the wall. He was in a tough spot. He was under pressure 50% of the time. They had injuries on the O-line. Made some bad plays, made a couple good plays, but if you look at their preseason this year, he was their second lowest offensive player plus minus wise in the preseason. Just kind of made a lot of poor mistakes, and as soon as he took the field, kind of the headlights were up for me on throws to the left. He had a bad grade on throws to the left, leaving a lot of balls inside. Sure enough, his first throw, kind of a rub route, trying to get the speed out on the left side, leaves it a little bit behind the guy. The guy jumps the route and picks it off. So there's some things that you see show up that you're not sure exactly how it's going to work out, but we'll see. He's going to get a chance here. I'm a little surprised that he is their best option behind Rodgers, and that's who they chose to go into the season with as number 2.
Yeah, I'm just reading the trusty Google Doc here. Outbreakers to the left, beware. I love that you are giving fair warning to the Packers and Packers.
Yeah, he can hit. I mean, I think you do have to be conscious of it, though. I mean, I'm sure in practice he shows it and he can hit it fine, but what he's put on tape, you do have to be a little cautious of calling as many of those types of plays to his left, because he's left way too many on the inside that have resulted in bad plays. So we'll see. We'll see kind of that head. Footwork, I think. I think footwork. That's a lot of the when you go to the NFL Combine and coaches want to see you throw, they all want to see the outbreaker to the left. That's the number one throw they want to see, because it is kind of a footwork / arm talent type throw. You got to get all the way through it, with your body in a different position and your arm angle kind of not on your throwing side to the right. So it's the most interceptions that you see are right to left type throws, outbreakers, and so it's definitely a footwork / kind of arm talent to be able to keep that thing up and outside.
Mentioned on the review podcast, we touched on this briefly, does take too many sacks, does not have the best feel in the pocket, was worst in all of college football his senior year as far as the percentage of pressured snaps that turned into sacks. That's usually a trait that stays the same year over year. Most of the guys that are good at feeling pressure and not taking sacks are generally stay good at it, and guys that struggle with it generally struggle with it. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. What about schematically, though, at Green Bay? We've spent so much time here discussing not only the few times where Aaron Rodgers has had a few games and we have to overreact and say, what's wrong with Aaron Rodgers? And we always point back to the scheme that is not really quarterback friendly from like a creating open throws standpoint, other than the RPO stuff that they do. It's a lot of, hey, go win your route, and then Aaron Rodgers is going to find you. And then a whole bunch more of the offense is, whether you win your route or not, Aaron Rodgers is going to extend a play, and then you're going to get open at some point. How do they adjust this offense? Because it can't be that vanilla with a guy that you just don't necessarily trust to make all these throws down in and down out. Can they adjust their offense? Will they adjust their offense? Take advantage of his athleticism? What can they do to make things easier for Hundley that maybe they wouldn't have done for an Aaron Rodgers?
I think they, like you said, use his athleticism, get him on bootlegs, get him outside the pocket. get the ball out of his hand quickly, because like you said, the sacks under pressure and the sacks in general are going to be an issue. So, get the ball out of his hands, RPOs, he can do some of that stuff, get him some, pretty defined looks to throw, timing routes on the outside and those types of things to keep him in rhythm, because he's going to have to stay in rhythm. And anytime under pressure, you see some poor plays and those types of things. So, it's not going to be easy. I personally, I don't know how it's going to go, but I still am a little shocked that that's their number 2 guy. Maybe he'll prove us wrong here, go ball out. But I personally think that him as the number 2 going into the season is a little risky. But we'll see if they can get something going and figure it out.
Yeah, so I'm certainly not rooting for injury for anybody. I hate seeing it, especially with star players. I am always interested to just see how teams, first off, how they rally, just from a pure mental, do they give up, do they rally around Hundley? And then from a schematic standpoint, if there is a change, if there are adjustments, if all of these weaknesses that we're highlighting for Hundley can somehow be, hidden a little bit through great game planning. And, so the football nerd in me wants to see how this plays out and how they play, hopefully to his strengths. So that's what I'll be looking for Hundley, from Hundley going forward. Again, a lot of people liked him coming out of college. I don't think a whole lot of people liked him. Not as a first-round guy, but liked him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, he went through some stretches where I think at the beginning of that season, everybody was on him and hyping him up. So there's definitely talent there. Let's not get that wrong. But it's just going to be interesting to see, like you said, how they piece it all together and help him out.
Let's stay in the NFC North. We did get some feedback on Twitter that said, I cannot believe you guys did not break Mitchell Trubisky's debut down last week. And we dropped the ball on that, Zach.
Yeah, we did.
We usually just jump right on the plan.
Yep.
We're usually all over it. So we'll talk about Trubisky in this past week in the game where he threw like 4 passes in an overtime. Now, they threw not a whole lot of passes. It was under 30 in an overtime game. It was one of the more controlled game plans. Conservative might not be the word, but controlled game plans that I've seen. I mentioned on Twitter quite a bit that, now that Glennon's out of the lineup, they're going to open up the boot game and get Trubisky out on the move. He's really good throwing on the run. He was 23 for 26 on designed bootlegs last year at UNC. Great part of his game we talked about in the preseason. This game was just a million bootlegs. You said a lot of screens here too. Yep, a lot of screens. Not a whole lot of just drop back, read it out type of plays. But he did play a pretty solid game for what he was asked to do. What did you see from Trubisky in this game against the against the Ravens that they ultimately won in overtime?
Yeah, I thought he played a very disciplined and just smart game. I mean, for what he was asked to do, you mentioned it, a lot of screens, took care of the ball. If something wasn't there and it was tight, which there was a lot of tight coverage, there was a lot of blitz looks, typical Ravens defense trying to come after a rookie guy. So he did everything he did. I think he had 6 throwaways in the game, so that kind of took his completion percentage stat down a little bit. But he made 2 big time throws under pressure, and
those were nice.
Of them. Yeah, the quick pressure that he found, the corner out for a touchdown, and then the one in overtime that we watched before we got on here, sidestepped a guy in the pocket, kept his eyes downfield. It was 3rd and 11 on the 41 going in, to be able to deliver this dig that he did over the middle of the Kendall Wright to set up the field goal. Pretty big time play in those circumstances, for what he was asked to do that whole game, and then he pulls that out and they win the game. So for a rookie to come in and play that disciplined and just take what they gave him and feel okay about throwing a ball away and not trying to do too much, I think says a lot about his game. And we'll see if he can kind of progress and they open it up here a little bit more as they get rolling.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on those 2 big-time throws. Those were really impressive. Those were fun to watch. Things that showed up on tape last year at UNC. A little bit of pocket movement, the ability to make those plays. I want to talk about the throwaways first, though. Do you think that was because, in his debut, Monday Night Football, game's on the line, he forces a pass, a bad late game interception. Are they just pounding it into his head all week? Like, just don't make bad decisions. We're going to roll you out. We're going to give you easy half-field reads, and if it's not there, you are firing this ball into the dirt, and you're collecting your, as Sam likes to always point out, 39.6 passer rating on this play when you fire it into the dirt, and that's it. Move on, play to live another day, and ultimately, you're taking care of the ball, and you're back in the game, and if you're not turning it over, you at least giving yourself a shot. Do you think that's just something that they were pounding into his head the entire week?
I think a little bit. You always have a fine line of trying to beat it over the head too much, and then you got a guy that's, paralyzed almost back there. Kind of saw it with Bortles this week. They had this game plan that play it safe, and then they need him to make throws, and he's not real comfortable doing it because he's been ingrained to not do it. So I think maybe there was a little bit to that extent. It seemed like a lot of them came on well-covered screens or early down, trying to get something down the field, and that just wasn't there. And the pass rush came in a little early. So, there's definitely, that pick that he made at the end of that Minnesota game, that's going to stick with him, and it showed up a little bit on Sunday there.
Yeah, and again, those two big-time throws. The first one, pressure right in his face. What I liked about it is he got out of the pocket quickly, created enough room to get the throw off, and it wasn't the receiver was open, but it took a lot of arm to just get the ball to him, and I thought that was a really nice play. That was the touchdown, and then the other one that, like you said, essentially set up the game winner. I mean, he was maneuvering multiple people in the pocket, kept his eyes up, threw the ball up and away so only his receiver could get it. I mean, those were two. I mean, they were big-time throws. That's why it's the big-time throw cast. That's why we're breaking them down.
And that's what we liked about him coming out, was his overall just football instincts and his instincts in the pocket, and it showed up really on those two plays especially. Yeah,
and then the boot game, when you have a good supporting cast, and I think they're going to have an okay running game the next few years with Jordan Howard and what they like to do with Tariq Cohen, and that sets up well. If they can just get this nice supporting cast around him, some well-rounded receiving threats, and just more guys to throw to, this could be dangerous, right? This could be a dangerous offense because he's going to be in different locations. He's not just sitting in the pocket. You're going to put him on the move. He can maneuver the pocket. They can do a lot if they can get him some more weapons.
I'm with you, man. They can do a ton. Just get kind of a big body guy outside that can go up and get it, and he can literally do any type of play from a progression standpoint and reading one side of the field to the next. And you mentioned the boot game, the deep shots. You can build a lot of RPO game as well. So
yes.
You can do a ton with this guy if you get everything around him right, and just kind of. I do like what they did, last week and really the first week too. Is just they're not asking him to do a whole lot and do too much. They're taking care of their guy and just letting him, feel things out as he goes. So the one thing we mentioned it, way back, but blitz recognition is kind of his MO coming out of college, and showed up a couple times in the game against the Ravens where he just failed to recognize the blitz. But that's the area you want to see him, as he gets to see more and more looks. Can he get the ball out and in some of those looks find the right guy and beat the blitz?
I feel like a lot of my current analysis is you've got this quarterback who is he's a mid-tier quarterback, and I don't say that in a negative sense. It's just that there's only a handful of top-end guys, right? So right. I put everybody else in the mid-tier. But there's a handful of top-end guys. And believe it or not, Tom Brady's getting old, and Drew Brees is getting old, and Aaron Rodgers is actually kind of getting old, and now he's out for the season. There's so few of these true elite quarterbacks. So much of my analysis comes back to, hey, here's Marcus Mariota. He has a skill set that you can game plan around and build around, and Trubisky has it. And all these other guys, Alex Smith has it. Is that where the NFL is going, where, the top end of Roethlisberger might be behind us, and the top end of Phillip Rivers might be behind us? There's just not this top end elite play in the foreseeable future in the NFL unless some other guys truly emerge, or you've got more, or if Andrew Luck continues what he did last year, or Russell Wilson. But there's there's so many quarterbacks that just don't have that top end in them, but they've got some very good things to build around. Is that where so much of the NFL is going? Throw Andy Dalton in the mix, Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of guys in this.
I'm with you.
In this boat, right?
I think that's a very fair analysis. I mean, you look at if you've got a top 20 or so guy, you've got a guy that you can win with if everything's around him, and you've got an offensive game plan that's working out and catering to his strengths. But you're right, the guys that are kind of you're waiting to take the next step that have that kind of Roethlisberger and carry the franchise type of guys, the Jameis Winstons, Mariota, you got Dak Prescott. They're pretty young still in year 2 and 3 here, so you're waiting for those guys to just develop a little bit more and get into more seasoned kind of years 5 and 6, and before they're up to that kind of play you expect that you see from Breeze and Roethlisberger if they can get there. But those are the guys that show that they could potentially do it. But I'm with you there. There's a lot of guys that are kind of middle of the road. How are you taking care of your guy? How are you setting him up week in and week out schematic wise?
Hey guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at Draft. That's Draft in the App Store or draft.com. Great way to play fantasy football. We've been doing it for months over here at PFF. They have full season best ball leagues where you just draft your team quick and easy, and then set it and forget it. Once you draft it, that's all you need, because they're going to take your best players every single week. You don't, even if you have Aaron Rodgers, he just got hurt, and I'm sorry for that, but they will replace him with the next best player on your team. They'll take your best players every single week, so you don't have to worry about injuries or waiver wire. The new drafts are starting every couple minutes, so not only can you do full season leagues, you've got head-to-head drafts, you have 3-person drafts, and now basketball's taking over too. If you're into the NBA, they've got a ton of new games there. Also MLB, NHL, and even golf. So go check it out, draft.com or Draft in your app store. Best part about all this is you can win real money, and we can give you guys some real money. A free $3 game when you make your first deposit and use the promo code PFF. So go to draft.com or Draft in your app store. Use the promo code PFF when you make your first deposit. Get a free $3 game and hopefully win some real money for yourself. Okay, so the rest of the podcast is for 49ers fans. Not exclusively for 49ers fans, but they are very interested in the rest of it. Before we get into the NFL draft quarterbacks, I want to touch on C.J. Beathard really quick. On the review podcast yesterday, our Monday release, I just straight up read some of the scouting report that you wrote on Beathard last year coming out of the draft that you read and I edited, just added my bits and pieces to it. Anything on Beathard that you want to talk about as far as, the Niners, what to expect, what they're hoping to get out of him down the stretch here, other than he's just not Brian Hoyer and he's an unknown, and, maybe his strengths and weaknesses real quick, and, what they may have seen in him to take him in the 3rd round.
Right, yeah, I think, they had just seen enough of Hoyer. Hoyer, he wasn't playing great in the first half, kind of was just ball placement-wise just barely off, and it resulted in, some balls on the ground that could have been caught, could have been better thrown, and then they put Beathard in there, and it ignited him a little bit. I think, he's kind of a tough, gritty guy. He has a good arm. We saw, when he can sit in there and he knows where to go. He's got a good, quick, smooth release, pretty good zip. But I think it always went back to the feel in the pocket was a little bit of a question. He can scan through and get through progressions, but kind of the feel in the pocket I think was the biggest thing that you wanted to see more consistently, I guess, when he was at Iowa, and kind of showed up as well on Sunday. But he is a tough guy in the pocket. He's going to hang in there. He's going to make some throws. He's going to make mistakes. But I think if you're a Niners fan, why not? Let's see what you got with this guy. You're sitting where you are with your record, and most likely looking for somebody in the future here. So why not take a chance with this guy? Seems like a pretty tough dude in the pocket. So give him a shot.
That's the other strategy that I think should be prevalent in the NFL is if you don't have a guy and you've got a young guy who you don't know what he can do, just throw these guys out there. Assuming your season's not on the line, figure out what you have as soon as possible. Also, Jacoby Brissett, who I know you like it overall. There's a lot to like about him. Jacoby Brissett made 2 really nice throws on Monday Night Football, and Twitter was already flipping him for a first-round pick in the future. I mean, that's how quickly, if you have a backup quarterback of any value, he has value. So why not? I mean, they might get a half a season of solid play out of Beathard, and they go into the draft and draft a guy, and all of a sudden you're flipping Beathard for more picks, and you're just, working the draft in the system and the way you should. So,
right. Where are you at? Where are you at with Beathard?
I just read your scouting report and trust you implicitly. Now
nice.
you mentioned he does have a pretty good arm. He's got some good zip. I just saw this like mid-level Iowa quarterback who never really excited, and you mentioned he's flat ball guy as well, and you mentioned even some pick and stick to his game. I thought we saw that early. Certain plays, through he had a dropped interception early against Washington. He just never wowed or excited. That would be my thing. And so when you're taking a guy in the 3rd round, for me, that's either a guy that is just this very clean game manager type, call that Cody Kessler, who you hope is going to tie some things up physically or improve physically and then become a useful guy. Or it's this guy whose highs are really high, but the lows are really low. And you're trying to cut out some of the lows, and it's that quote-unquote upside guy, right, in the 3rd round. I feel like Beathard's there's just no extreme to him on either side, right? He's not this classic game manager. He's not this high upside guy, and it just doesn't excite me.
I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, that's kind of where he fell, and I think ranking-wise for the draft QBs last year, he was, in the top 10, kind of expected him to maybe go in the 5th, 6th, 7th roundish, but
right, that's what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we thought he'd go, but shoot, he's got a chance to prove us wrong. He's getting, they liked him in the preseason a ton, and he made some plays. He ran around. He made a nice scramble play the other day, finding a guy for a touchdown. So maybe he's got a little magic to his game and can kind of ignite that team a little bit.
I will say it is always fascinating to me when a team really does like a guy, right? And you've got, when you like a guy, you're like, hey, this is our system. This is what we do. This is what we're looking for. I'm just intrigued by that. So I want to see what the 49ers saw and, how they're going to use him and how they're going to take advantage of that skill set that apparently they liked enough to take him in the 3rd round. So, I'm just giving you guys reasons to watch C.J. Beathard down the stretch here. And I'll give you reasons to watch more college football. We're going to fly through some NFL draft quarterbacks. If you guys want very detailed breakdowns on these guys, you just go to profootballfocus.com. Comes out every Wednesday, and it's all part of PFF Edge. We will take the top 13 NFL draft quarterbacks, or 13 of the top draft-eligible quarterbacks, break them down every which way. Zach and I give our analysis of their previous game, and it has an in-depth statistical breakdown that you can't find anywhere else. We've been doing that over this entire season, essentially. And we're just going to take some highlights of that and say, okay, we're at about the midway point of the season. What have we seen from some of these top-end guys? So let's start with, what do we have here? We got 7 guys listed here. Maybe we'll just tack on a couple other interesting names at the end who may have stood out, because here's how I evaluated this draft class coming into the season, Zach. People are calling it the year of the quarterback. They're calling it, this incredible draft class. I was more reserved on the draft class. All I said was there are a lot of first-round potential players. I mean, there are a lot of guys who have a lot to their game, but still have room to improve. And if they make that improvement, all right, now we're talking. If they don't make that improvement, then maybe this class gets a little overblown. It feels like we're closer to the draft class was overblown, answer right now. I just don't think it's not exceptional across the board. All these guys have issues.
I'm with you. Everybody, this class was crowned way too early, and everybody thought these guys were surefire, top 5 picks, and they definitely, some of them have that. And I still think that maybe 1 or 2 of these guys still is, but
right.
To call them surefire and comparing them to past draft classes, I thought was a little. I'm with you. It was a little crazy during the summer, but we've kind of seen some good, some bad from a mixture of guys here.
All right, let's start with Sam Darnold. He was a guy who we watched last year, was a redshirt freshman, posted an outstanding grade, especially for a redshirt freshman. I had seen him at Elite 11 a couple years ago, close up. I don't think he wowed there, but he had some wow plays at USC. The type of stuff that doesn't show up at Elite 11. Some of that stuff was, hey, it's the Rose Bowl against Penn State, and we're down with a minute to go, and Sam Darnold's going to drive you down the field like that. And I had no doubt that he was going to. Like, he has that about him, right? Like, right. In crunch time, he is going to make plays. But these last few weeks, he had high interception totals earlier in the season. He had a little bad interception luck earlier on, but that has all offset now because he has started misreading coverages, not taking care of the balls from a fumble standpoint. He's had some really bad fumbles. So the last few weeks have been extremely concerning. But when you put it all together, you still have a guy that I think has a lot of NFL-type ability. He's hit a lull and a slump, and he's still only a redshirt sophomore. What are your thoughts on Darnold so far this season?
It's been tough to watch him struggle because everybody wanted to see him take that leap and continue on that Rose Bowl game, which was an unbelievable game to watch quarterback play. So, he struggled. I still, we talked about it. I still don't think that you overthink it with him. He's going through a little lull, trying to do too much maybe. And, just, you mentioned the turnovers and forcing balls into coverage, just a little out of sorts. And I go back and I think that he's got to get a little more intuitive before the snap to get kind of scouty term here. He's a very reactionary type player, and you see him kind of bouncing in the pocket and sliding around, and maybe uptick a little bit in not necessarily a predetermined throw, but a little bit more of I'm going to try to make this thing work. If it's not there, then I'll go to the next spot instead of reacting off of everything that he sees. I think that's hurt him a little bit, but I still think that he's kind of the guy in this class, and whether he comes out this year or next year, I think he's set up to be a big time player in the NFL.
And it very well could be a next year type of thing now for Darnold. Again, only a redshirt sophomore. He's got about a year and a half, not even, of starts under his belt. Earlier in the season, I was defending his turnovers, but 18 turnover-worthy plays now, most among all Power 5 quarterbacks, third most in the nation. So that's concerning. Do want to see that improve down the stretch here. Let's go across town to Josh Rosen, UCLA. Another guy, first career start against Virginia as a true freshman. You're like, that's it. Future number 1 pick. This guy's incredible. Since then, there's been flashes and then ups and downs. And first game of this season against Texas A&M, it's the greatest comeback in college football history, but it was aided by 2 of the luckiest touchdowns you'll ever see. I wrote that up on the site. He was chucking jump. He tried to throw one out of bounds, and it got caught for a touchdown. He threw one right to a safety that ended up getting caught for a touchdown. It was just a fascinating game, but there's a lot to like about Rosen's game, questions off the field, and what do you see from him mostly on field as far as what he's able to do and what he still needs to work on?
I think he's been playing well pretty much throughout. You still see the mistakes and some of the under pressure, trying to do too much, some of the hero type plays, but in terms of a guy that's got to truly carry his team week in and week out, I'm not really sure that there's another guy out there like him with what they have on defense. And, they're chucking the ball around 50 times a game. And
it's a good point.
So you're going to see some of those mistakes, and he's going to feel like he's got to try to, force some stuff maybe that he shouldn't try to do. But I'm still a big fan of his game. You mentioned he's got the classic pocket passer look, and he's got a good feel in the pocket. He gets through progressions, and he's got a very just kind of pure mechanics, footwork, all that stuff. From the eye test, you're like, this guy is the guy. So you're peeling the layers back a little bit on his game and seeing, some of the stuff that he struggled with. But overall, man, I think he's playing pretty well.
It is a good point, bringing up his supporting cast, elevating those guys. Excellent intermediate thrower, too, and has all the throws in his bag as far as, seam routes and touch throws. And look, there's a lot of nice things to his game, and I think I'm closing in on the point where a lot of the boneheaded plays that he's had through the years, are just, it's closer to like the Jameis Winston level for me, where like you just know there's going to be some bad stuff in there, but if you have a guy that can make that many positive plays over time, it usually works out for you. So I think Rosen's creeping into that level for me, which bodes well. To me, that's a first round player. That's a guy that's going to go out and potentially win games for you, even if he might lose a few along the way. So
I'm with you.
That's where I'm with Rosen. I'm just going down the list here. Josh Allen from Wyoming, a guy, I feel bad now being on the other side of this because I was one of the ones who wanted to hype him up a year ago at this time. You watch Late Night Wyoming.
You basically found him.
Yeah, I found him. I was just watching Late Night Wyoming football every single week, and I'm like, who is this dude throwing lasers off balance? Out of the pocket, 50 yards down the field, right? Perfect.
He had some unbelievable throws out of the pocket last year, especially. Yeah, I'm with you.
He was incredible. So, I mean, look, the high-end plays were awesome, and he led the league. He led the nation in big-time throw percentage last year. Now, you and I broke him down. We watched the film together this offseason. We said, okay, look, the high-end plays, those are fun. He looks like he's way more comfortable playing backyard football, playing outside of the pocket. Inside the pocket needs a lot of work. If he could take that next step, and that is a huge if, this, for any quarterback, if he could take that next step, this guy could potentially be special. If anything, we have not only have we not seen that jump, but the special plays are just not there the way they were a year ago. Lost a lot of NFL talent to the NFL, both along the offensive line and as far as playmakers have gone. And even last year when he was making those special plays, his accuracy was all over the place. Yeah. But he also probably has the best arm I've seen since Cam Newton, as far as like throw with velocity that the broadcast camera can barely keep up with it type of velocity. That's how I judge it. So that's my Josh Allen scouting report. What have you seen this year from Allen at Wyoming?
Yeah, it's just not gone well from really week one, and you mentioned the guys around him and all those things, but he's just doesn't look like he's playing with a whole lot of confidence. I think it's showing in just his decision making and indecisiveness to let some stuff go. Offensively, I'm not really sure if they even know where to go at this point. You're seeing a lot of grab bag, a lot of different things that they're not really sure how to cater to him right now, because it's just he's out of sorts a little bit. You hope that he can kind of build off the one last week, and he made some good throws down the stretch. If he can kind of build off of some of that and get back to just playing ball, like you mentioned last year when he was at his best, it looked like he was just playing free, playing ball, and making some plays. But you've seen him struggling. Well, I think the biggest thing that we saw watching this summer was quick game and just pre-snap decisions and knowing where to go with the ball before it snapped. You've seen him regress in that area. So, still the tools there and all those things, but he certainly struggled accuracy-wise, decision-making, basically kind of across the board.
I want to get Sam on here because he's seen a lot of these quarterbacks for just one game, and he likes to do his one-game scouting. So he saw Darnold in a bad game, says, okay, he's terrible, one bad game. Josh Allen, he saw a bad game. So we'll just get Sam on here, get his one-game take. He also saw Baker Mayfield this weekend, Oklahoma quarterback, and he liked him. So if Sam likes a guy, he hates all college quarterbacks, that usually bodes well. And Baker had a couple bad throws. He had a couple just pure uncharacteristic misreads. But, man, Baker Mayfield, every time I want to pick something apart about his game, he just seems to come through. Every which way that we break him down, from a stats perspective, a grade perspective, skill set perspective, he's pretty good. He's the best college football quarterback out of this group. Is he the best pro prospect out of this group? This is a crazy question.
I know. And I think everybody's looking for those reasons for him not to be that guy. But
right, because he's too short and he's just not supposed to be that good. He's a walk-on.
Yeah.
He's all these other things. He's got a good system. All these things are working against him, suppoally.
He runs around too much, plays out of structure, and all those things. And when we charted the college quarterback's accuracy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was the most accurate college quarterback, even including last year's draft prospects. Is that right?
Yes.
So I mean, he just ball
throws,
location and
everything.
Yeah. So I I like his game a lot. I mean, everybody loves him as a college player. You always go back to every time he's kind of had back against the wall and people didn't think he could do it, he steps through and does it every single time, whether he was a walk-on at Tech or going to OU to beat out Trevor Knight. And then just this season, not as many playmakers around him. He doesn't have the running game as he's going to be, and he's the same guy each time. So I'm a big fan of his game overall. I'd like to see if there's one thing to just that as far as the next level translating, letting some stuff go when it's a little bit tighter of a window. He's very safe with the ball, which you like, but at the next level, he's going to have to the stuff over the middle. If it's not, a ton of separation, still let some of those go. He does it at times, but he definitely plays out of structure quite a bit. But he always finds a way because his instincts are so good to move around and navigate and find throws. So I wouldn't bet against this guy at all, man.
The last thing you said sums him up for me. I want to break down the film every which way. I just ultimately I don't want to be the guy that doubts Baker Mayfield. Right? Because if you told me he becomes the next Russell Wilson, I probably wouldn't be surprised. Now, if he fails at the next level, fine. I just don't want to be the guy that doubts him or writes him off. That's all.
Right.
Because he's proven everything along the way, from a mental makeup standpoint.
And we're seeing it kind of with Deshaun Watson right now, and these teams that passed on him, and
we said similar.
He had all these things that you're like, well, I don't know, man, is that gonna? And if you're gonna go down, if you were the Browns drafting or whoever of those teams, if you're gonna go down, why not go down with a Deshaun Watson or a Baker Mayfield type of guy that has shown all these things to. Mentioned from a mental standpoint and just can kind of just lift everybody up and has that it factor. So it's a lot of the same stuff with him. So we'll see. Everybody's going to pick him apart in the draft process, but he should be right there with these guys at the end of it, I would think.
All right, let's fly through the last couple because I said it would be quick, and I know we could talk about these guys forever. Your alma mater.
Yeah, we're getting on a tangent here.
I know. I just don't want to be the guy that doubts Baker Mayfield. That's all. Your alma mater, Oklahoma State. Mason Rudolph coming into the season. He's had some very productive seasons. I think coming into the season we said, big, huge guy, doesn't really have this cannon for an arm. He's got some scheme that the scheme opens some stuff up for him. What's the good and bad from Rudolph and what we've seen this season?
He's played really efficient. You mentioned the playmakers around him it's the best in the country, and Washington and Marcel Aitman and those guys that really play to his strengths because he can, Aitman going up 50-50 balls. And, you see those two guys are perfectly fit his strengths. He can push the ball down the field. He's probably the best post thrower in college right now. And, so it kind of works out all well for him, and he takes care of the ball. He's a good decision maker. So you're seeing all that stuff kind of add up. He's had a big year. The TCU game, they kind of got a little bit out schemed in some areas of that. Gary Patterson, but he's had a couple mistakes trying to do a little too much out of the pocket. I think it's the one thing that you've seen, but overall efficient and playing really well.
So that's Mason Rudolph, Oklahoma State. Let's talk Lamar Jackson out of Louisville. I've made the Michael Vick comparison to him before because of two reasons. I think he has a cannon for an arm, and he is a special athlete as far as athleticism goes. Everybody says, well, you can't run around to the next level. You can't do this or that. His athleticism will be a game changer at the next level. Some people like to say that he's a future wide receiver for some reason, but I think he's got plenty of ability in his arm to play quarterback at the next level. Has a cannon. The other thing that I think is similar to Michael Vick, inconsistent accuracy. But I think he's also improved this year. What have you seen from Lamar?
Yeah, he's improved some of those perceived weaknesses. I'm with you. I don't understand the people that don't think he can play QB at the next level. If you look at kind of the lower end quarterbacks in the NFL right now, you're going to tell me that you wouldn't want to just plug in Lamar Jackson and see what you got with him over some of those guys. You mentioned the arm strength, and it looks like a Nerf ball sometimes when he's throwing the ball. But the accuracy, ball location underneath is a little spotty here and there. But For being a Michael Vick type of guy and maybe perceived as a one read and run type of guy, he can scan through progressions, and he's getting better. So that's the main thing. You want to see him work in the pocket, not take off and go, but he's definitely improved in that area a little bit.
Yeah, I think he can read plays out perfectly fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing I say about him, I think as far as missed throws, he'll miss throws. Like there'll be some ugly missed throws, but then he'll come back with some pinpoint tight window throws. So there'll be some variance there, but between that and the athleticism, I think you could build an offense around Lamar Jackson at the next level. So
I'm with you. Got to gain some weight though. He's got to get a little bigger.
Yeah, you don't want him taking big hits, and I think avoiding big hits is very much a skill set type of thing too. Like Russell Wilson's really good at it, and Michael Vick was bad at it. So you have to be good at avoiding those hits, especially if you are a little bit slighter build wise. So, still want to see him continue to improve as a passer, add more polish and accuracy. One last name to discuss: Luke Falk out of Washington State, coming off his worst game of the season, had 5 interceptions against Cal. And arm issues all off season. We said, I just don't know if he has enough arm. Can he improve this? And I think that's really showed up on tape this year. Outside the numbers throws have been ugly at best so far this season.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the main thing. You like, he's the pocket passer and he can win from the pocket and all those things. But it does come down to the arm strength and really arm strength under pressure in tight pockets, I think. And, you don't see that enough from him like you do see with some of these other guys. But still a good, developmental backup type of guy, kind of almost in the same mold of a Cody Kessler, although I think Kessler's got a little more athleticism and ability to kind of extend better, but kind of the same mold type of guy, but definitely a good solid college player. And he's gotten some first round love here, early on in the season especially, but I think he's going to be a tick behind these guys when it's all said and done.
Yeah, that's my feeling with Falk. There's touch and feel for zones and different things like that. Fine. I just think he's limited as far as what he can do. So the closest we could do to being quick as far as the NFL draft quarterbacks go, if you guys want more information, like I said, all a part of PFF Edge. Every single Wednesday, we will break them down every which way. That'll do it for us today, the quarterback analysis part of the PFF podcast. 4 big episodes for the PFF podcast every single week. Mailbag edition, middle of the week. Podcasts at profootballfocus.com is where you're going to email us. That's plural, podcasts at profootballfocus.com. You guys have come up with some great concepts lately. And then there'll be a Week 7 preview later in the week. Been mentioning PFF Edge a few times here. The best way to get that is profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. There are some amazing offers there to get it very, very cheap. So go check that out. That's PFF-offers. And then PFF Elite, we're giving away one every week, a $200 value. All you have to do is leave a 5-star review over at iTunes. Leave your email address or Twitter handle so we can get in touch with you and let you know if you won. So go leave that nice 5-star review and you can go win PFF Elite. Tell your friends all about PFF, giving you guys a free Elite subscription. So thanks again to everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys next time.